innovation is both creative, messy, and it needs to be structured to be able to get business value out of it.
We need different cultures to be able to have that cross-pollination of ideas.
Innovate Cebu. What is it all about? What are we about to embark on?
It brings together the different pieces of the innovation puzzle. The idea, access to funding, learning and mentorship. Sometimes you need a different team to lead that innovation.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Piloting the Future, a podcast brought to you by Energy Central. Here on Piloting the Future, we're going deep with the leaders, innovators, and forward thinkers responsible for not just imagining where our power future is headed, but building it day by day. In each episode, we'll go beyond the headlines to hear from industry insiders and bold, game-changing innovators to separate the hype from reality. So hello, everybody out there on listening to Piloting the Future. You might notice it's a little bit different today. There's no Lee. We're so sad. It's me, solo, here, coming to you live from Cebu, Philippines. So here's the backstory. Innovation Force and Aboitiz Power started working together about a year ago, and that came on the heels of my participation in a U.S. presidential trade mission, exploring innovation, digital transformation, and energy. Now, a year later, I'm back, and I'm here to support an innovation challenge called Innovate Cebu. Since we have so many listeners in the U.S. who may have not been to Cebu, Philippines, let me tell you, the Philippines ranks among the most disaster-prone countries, and Cebu City is home to over 1 million people and is especially vulnerable. Rising sea levels, increasingly intense typhoons, flooding, and aging infrastructure can put lives at stake and economic development at risk. And so for Cebu to thrive, it must not only rebuild, but reimagine itself to withstand the future shocks. And that requires local ingenuity, faster innovation cycles, and scalable solutions grounded in the region's unique needs. Here to break it all down, I'm joined by Jokin, Deputy COO of Aboitiz Power, and Marynelle Rosales, AVP, Business Process and Strategic Performance. So, fasten your seatbelts. It's time to find out what happens when innovation goes from idea to impact with Aboitiz Power. So, Lee, it's great to see you. As you know, I was gone for a couple weeks on my amazing trip to Southeast Asia, where I got to spend a few weeks in the Philippines with our customer, Aboitiz Power. But we were co-hosting this huge innovation challenge called Innovate Cebu with the Aboitiz Foundation. And it was this, the reason I was there was to go over and help support this event, which connected the universities and startups all together to start to solve resiliency challenges that was going to make the local community more resilient.
Yeah, I heard there was a big earthquake there. Were you impacted? Did the conference still happen?
So we recorded the amazing podcast, which you're about to hear. And then what happened was, like, I think it was 2 hours later, a 6.9 magnitude earthquake hit Cebu. Like, the epicenter was where I was staying in Cebu.
You know that World Series earthquake between the A's and the Giants in San Francisco? I was in that one, and that is not fun. That was a 7+. Scary thing.
It was very scary, and it was a little bit of irony, right? Because here we were hosting an innovation challenge to build local resiliency in the community. We were looking for really good innovative ideas. We focused on a regional group, a local group of university students that built an app in 2 days. Lee, this is what the beauty of AI is. In 2 days, they built an app after the earthquake and it was an aid disaster relief app, and they were able to find people in need and connect them to the people who had supplies. So these university students put together this app in 2 days, launched it, positively impacted this community where there were lives being lost, got supplies where the supplies needed to be, all by basically using Google Maps, Google Data, ChatGPT AI, and open source files to create this. And it was released on the phone, and we were able to feature them the Innovate Cebu. I mean, I had tears in my eyes. It was like so moving. So the student group got up, they presented, it was the whole point of the event was like, how do you find the silver lining? How do you stay resilient? And they were the living proof. It was, the things these students can teach us, right? And so it was a very humbling experience where I had been invited back as an innovation expert, and I was learning from the students who were teaching us all a thing or two about how to be innovative and resilient.
Wow. And you got a podcast episode out of it.
Yeah.
What's exciting about that podcast that we should all listen to?
Well, first off, we missed you terribly, but I did the best I could without you. It was hard. But the thing to keep in mind here with this podcast is the importance of affordability. Again, this is the theme. This is the gift that keeps on giving everywhere I go in the world. And as I mentioned, I was in Singapore, Malaysia, and the Philippines. Frugal innovation, affordable innovation. Whether I was talking to a utility, a government, I even started talking to some innovators in the health tech sector. This theme of innovating for the sake of being affordable is a real thing. And it's what they're really practicing in Southeast Asia. And our customer, Aboitiz Power, absolutely. We announced a 3-year extension to our deal because they were able to harness our platform to deliver ROI in the Philippines. And so it just blows my mind of how far ahead I think some places in the world may be ahead of us, because they understand that innovation is all about affordable and human ingenuity.
Yeah, so innovation isn't just about doing projects that will save you money. It's about doing the innovation itself frugally. Frugivation.
Hashtag frugivation. I think that's that one might catch. I mean, yeah, it was such a stark contrast, right? Of being able and just feeling so empowered and talking to the local folks that are taking everything in stride, bringing forward local innovation, empowering their employees to be able to drive the change, measuring it and pushing these cultures, right, of democratizing innovation and supporting the employee base. So it really was just this amazing trip where I learned so much. And it was really moving as well to see people using the platform in ways that we had never imagined it could be used, and how it's bringing positivity to these communities.
Well, thank you so much for going down there. That's quite a trip, and doing the podcast. I can't wait to hear it. And thank you so much for Innovation Works, because that's what makes a lot of this possible. So thank you, Kim.
Awesome. Thanks, Lee, and thanks, Aboitiz Power. Jokin and Marynelle, welcome to the cockpit here on Piloting the Future. We're so excited to have you join, and I'm so excited to be in your awesome country.
Thanks for having us, Kim.
Yeah, this is a great setup, and we've been having fun so far. So I'm so excited to hear more about your perspectives on innovation. And I thought, Jokin, you could get us started by telling us a little bit about the journey to innovate and create a safe place for innovative thinking here at Aboitiz Power.
Thanks, Kim. It's good to have you back in the Philippines. And yeah, sure. We've been in Aboitiz Power. We've been big on innovation for quite some time. In the distribution utilities where I'm in, we've been spending a lot more time thinking about convincing and thinking about and trying to convince people that we've been actually innovating our whole lives, right? We've been learning the fastest way to brush our teeth, commuting, the fastest way to get to work. We've been constantly innovating, and that to me was what we are continuing to try and do. Is to basically say, like, you don't need so much thought behind innovating because you've been doing it for so long. So what we want to promote is just do more of it, just continue to do it. And we call that program our Big Bang, and that's been going on for about 3 years. And I'd like to say that it's been very successful, because people are often so scared to innovate. They think it's such a big word, and they confuse these large innovations, which is what you often read about, with the importance as well of the incremental.
You're speaking my lingo, because I how many times has everybody heard me say on this podcast, it's everyone innovates. Everyone and everyone should be an innovator, and it's all about human ingenuity. It's not just about the big breakthrough. It's about the incremental that we do every single day that makes a huge impact. What do you think, Marynelle? Same for you?
Absolutely. It's same for me here, Kim.
So why don't we talk a little bit more specifically about what's worked? Maybe you could share some lessons learned. And Jokin, this could also be a good opportunity for you to talk a little bit more about the techglomerate that y'all are building down here.
So Aboitiz Power is part of a larger conglomerate called the Aboitiz Group, and my uncle has coined the term techglomerate because
It's a great term.
yeah, he felt that conglomerates are dead, and since we are a conglomerate and we didn't want to die, that we kind of reinvent ourselves to this techglomerate, right? And it's this notion that we want to do everything tech first. So our contribution to the techglomerate was thinking about how we could digitize a lot of our processes, how we could do AI or embed AI in everything. I remember when we were first talking about Zoom, this was before the pandemic, right? And this was all part of this whole plan of his that, hey, I want to be tech first. And to get a conglomerate, as old as ours, we're over 100 years old now, to shift before something like the pandemic where now everybody else uses Zoom, I think was one of the telltale signs that he was onto something. So we wanted to kind of push forward with that. And, what we learned or at least what I've learned to answer that question was that it's just really hard to compete with your day job. And one of the things that I still struggle with is in an era that prizes efficiency, how do you promote such an inefficient process, right? It's kind of getting people to sit down, take the time to think when nobody has the time. They've already brought in as much efficiency into their lives by the fastest way to brush their teeth, the fastest way to get to work. So how can we put innovation in there as one of those things that happens to compete with their existing commitments?
And I know you're big on curiosity. And so, Marynelle, I was going to say, why don't you talk about what Jokin's bringing up, but at the employee level? Because I think that's your job. Your job is really going and getting the employees really excited about participating and getting them to slow down. I mean, is there time to slow down with the front line from where you sit?
So what we've been seeing, right, Kim, as we entered into this space of innovation, and you said it rightly, right? Innovation felt like a buzzword. The first thing we had to recognize that innovation sometimes fails, and that it is chaotic. It is a messy process, and it is a process. And so I think the issue was a lot of people felt like, why am I wasting my time in this messy process? And so the moment we started to recognize and acknowledge that it is a messy process, we started to build the guardrails around which they could operationalize their ideas and make sense of the mess. Because the secret, we believe, and what we've been finding is that the secret is translating the mess into strategy, translating the mess into something we can measure. And so then people are able to measure their success and find successes in that. So to answer the question of, are people finding the time? Sometimes they don't even need to find the time. It's only when they're doing their day jobs, when they're doing the work that they're doing, it should click where, oh, why can't I do this process a little better and a little faster? So that's what we're noticing now, where people are kind of switching the lens from like big innovations, like Jokin had said, to how can I make my job easier? And that's a lot of the citizen development that we've been seeing in Aboitiz Power. Distribution Utilities are our own company here.
Tell me a little bit more about that what did you say, citizen
development? And so low code, no code has been very much accessible to a lot of people. So with AI and low code, no code, it's easy to understand how to code. And so the teams have been making solutions that work for them for their day to day. Now, The challenge now for us is it can kind of get messy, right, with all of the the developments that they're doing. So what we've been able to, or what we're trying to put into play is, like I said, the guardrails around which they can innovate. So like a highway with guardrails, right? They without the guardrails, things tend to get off course. So with the guardrails, they're still able to innovate, which is the fear of a lot, where how can I keep the creative spark without, veering too far from the edge, but also making sure that these ideas and these innovations are operationalized, they're valuable to the company. And so, yeah, so there's a lot of citizen development that's happening.
That's awesome. And I love how you keep putting the emphasis on operationalize, because I'm a big believer in that. Jokin, at the beginning, you had said innovation is a big word. Here, when I'm speaking to innovators a lot in the US, affordability is a big idea right now. We've really got to drive affordability. Innovation sometimes can seem like a big idea. And what I like to say is it's about operationalizing your innovation program so that you can get the affordability out of it. So without a way to be able to drive a disciplined process, you're not going to be able to have one of these innovation programs that is really driving the bottom line savings. Okay, so getting back to more around innovation and inside of your working with your employees, what's been some of the biggest surprises that you've seen so far? Maybe something that was unexpected that surprised you.
So in the beginning, I said that, we want people to not think so much about innovating and just do it. But what I did notice is that while that's a great way to get ideas, if you want to move on to the next phase, which is implementing that, you really need time to think a couple of steps ahead. And I feel that while we did have a lot of ideas, there were a couple of pieces missing. And those pieces became quite evident. And actually, one of them to me was actually spending time with people to flush out how to execute their ideas or how to shut down an idea that they thought was good, right? So you want to get people to move away from, I'm scared of this big word innovation. And the way you do that is by trying new things, throwing ideas out there. But the next step to that is, okay, how do I now figure out whether this is a good idea? Or how can I improve that idea? And so for me, that was the biggest thing, that I was shocked at how little time people had to spend on like thinking through what should the next step be.
What surprised you, Marynelle?
What surprised me and I'm fairly new. So what surprised me when I walked into the process was just the amount of ideas. And like Jokin had alluded to, it was just so many ideas at the same time. And can I call it the lack of discipline around those ideas? And what we are finding now is, to Jokin's point, is that I think we tend to fall in love with our idea and then we pursue that and then think that that's the only way to go. And so we forget that there are possibilities of collaborating or possibilities of improving upon other people's ideas. So what really surprised me was the amount of ideas, because initially I thought, do I have to push for this innovation to actually come into play or come into picture? But no, that was like, oh, there's a lot of ideas. We just need to, I don't want to call it manage the chaos, but more put a framework of how to, like, it's not even a rule book, a framework within which we can all navigate that innovative process.
Yeah, I was going to say earlier today when you were walking me around the building, we were talking a lot about the importance of collaboration and self-organization. And so I think now that you have the framework in place, people are now naturally starting to gravitate towards collaborating and organizing themselves around the ideas. And that was something you wanted to push a little bit because, there's a lot of departments here. How do you start to break down those departmental walls and work together?
It's funny because in the beginning, right, there was no structure. And so what I thought was, you know what, if no one's going to follow the framework, I'm going to push the framework down and say, this is how we are going to operate. Because then in all the chaos, I believe there needs to be a voice that says, okay, this is the rules of engage. These are the rules of engagement within which we operate. And yes, for context, we have multiple DUs across all of the Philippines, and so it could be very difficult to find a space to collaborate. So in the beginning, that was a very manual process where, okay, please talk to this guy, and you can even introduce me to a whole bunch of other people where, okay, talk to this guy, and then that conversation led to another conversation. And so now I feel that we have room, and we're growing, albeit slowly, but it's a progress where people are starting to talk to each other, call each other, use the technology that's available to them. So that's been an interesting part of our journey.
It's awesome. I love to hear more about the secrets around collaboration, especially when we are working within these large companies where it doesn't come naturally to us. Jokin, you came to visit me in New York not too long ago. Well, you weren't visiting me, but we were at an innovation conference together, and we got to spend some time just talking about some of your big ideas. And I wondered if you wouldn't mind sharing a few, because you are doing some really incredible things here, and it just blows me away how you think about your customer and how you're trying to just go beyond with an expansive mind what could be the art of the possible here in the Philippines, and what you can do to, I think, improve not just power and reliability, but livelihood.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. It seems like forever ago, that New York trip. And I guess in a lot of my travel and a lot of being abroad has given me a lot of ideas. And like I said earlier, what's been lacking is the time to think through those ideas. And I think what Nell was, what I like about process is it sets the time for you to think about certain aspects of your plan. It allows you to set guardrails and the timelines for when you need to get things done. And so that's what these kind of trips abroad also help. When I'm in an airplane, I spend a lot of time on airplanes. That's the time when a lot of these big ideas come, because it's the only time I have to work through these thoughts. And the idea I'm most excited about is that, we started a venture in studio, right, where we called it Power Plus, and we aligned it to our massive transformative purpose, empowering the evolution of our cities. And the reason we came up with that was because we felt we have, 1 million households under us that we serve. Why are we just selling electricity? We have so many ideas. We're usually the largest taxpayer in our area, which means we're one of the largest companies in our area. We can attract the best talent because we are one of the largest companies in the areas we operate in. We have people, we employ thousands and thousands of people. Each of them have many ideas. We employ people from all parts of the cities we operate in, and so we have a very good grip of what's actually going on and what the problems are. So, we started this venture studio to focus on an idea that we could implement. And part of it was because I also wanted people to show others how that we could be more than just a power. And utility is a very hot industry right now. Everybody's talking about energy with the rise of data centers and the increase in consumption, with the, cost cutting in the RE space, in the renewable space. There's a lot of things happening, or reading it. I see it in the headlines all the time. And I think that one of the big responsibilities that we have is not just to keep the lights on, but to actually solve, big problems in our communities, in our cities. And so what this venture in studio has been able to accomplish, larger than the businesses we've started, is actually that we're now doing things like Innovate Cebu. This was not my idea, right? This was the idea of other people in my team who felt that, hey, we have the mindset now. We have a lot of pieces of the puzzle. Why don't we bring that in to do a program like Innovate Cebu? And so for me, that was the exciting part. The exciting part of having a venture studio in a large conglomerate, which I believe, and when actually it was clarified in that innovation conference that we went to, where actually we were talking to a lot of startup founders, and I asked the panel this question. I said, everybody here tells me that venture should be done, or that it's very hard for large conglomerates to do venture because of their slow mindset, their love for processes, and tell me why that's wrong. And I remember the panel was like, "We can't, because actually conglomerates have the money, they have the financing, which is a big piece of that puzzle." And I 100% agree, right? I think that what the conglomerates lack is this inquisitive, curious mindset, because they have all the other pieces. So this venture studio, the biggest success that I credit to it is that the culture of that venture studio, that curiosity, that quest for new things, the quest to solve problems, is now pollinating ideas within the larger conglomerate. And I think that role that it's playing is larger than any single idea that is coming out of that studio.
And that's the hard part. I think the cross-pollination, that's really impressive, because I think you put the employees first. And, that was something important when you and I were talking. You really believe that the best ideas were going to come from the employees. And so I think that's why the cross-pollination is happening. You believe and trust in your employees to have the right solutions to these problems that are being faced in the community and here at Aboitiz Power.
Absolutely. And you're right. We need different cultures to be able to have that cross-pollination of ideas. Because if you only have one type of culture, if you're not an innovative culture, then those ideas will not sprout, right? Those ideas will not grow. And sometimes you need a different team to lead that innovation, which, I mean, I'm sure Nell can also talk about, right? Wherein we have people with ideas that aren't ready to implement because, well, I have my day job, I have my competing commitments, my competing priorities. But hey, I'll gladly submit that to the venture studio, right? So actually, what we did the first year that we didn't even call it a venture. Back then, it was just, let's try and get ideas. We had a session wherein we brought in basically the one downs and some of the two downs, all the COOs, and we asked the COOs to step out of the room, and we had a day wherein, and at that point we didn't realize what we were doing, but that's what started the venture studio. We just said, wow, these guys have ideas. How can all of these guys have so many ideas? But when I talk to them in the larger group, I hear crickets. So, we talked about process, and I guess that's the hard part with innovation, right? Is that there is a need for process, but depending on where you are in the evolution of your innovative mindset, depending on where you are in your, actually, I should say, maturity, sometimes that process is not helpful. So we started without process because we came from an organization that had a ton of process, and slowly have been cross-pollinating each other to end up with, a studio of the venture studio that is not just coming up with ventures, but is also coming up with a new culture, right? And I think that is also contributing to our techglomerate.
Right. Yeah, the learning by doing, and it's the
Yes.
it's having the process and the venture studio.
Yep.
Like Brene Brown was, recently we were talking about in Strong Ground, how she was really pushing paradox
Yes.
and statements.
Right.
Both can be true. To operationalize innovation, you got to have a process, but you can also have a venture studio to give the space for a little bit more chaos and allow the self-organization and cross-pollination. It's really exciting.
It is quite exciting. And Kim, during the conversation earlier, you had also asked me what projects I'm most excited about. And I was thinking about it as Jokin was speaking and loving the terms cross-pollination. And I thought of the word paradox because I believe it is a little known fact about innovation that there will always be that paradox, that end, that it can be, it is um, both creative, messy, and it needs to be structured to be able to get business value out of it. And so I was thinking about a lot of the projects that have come onto our desks and we need to review and all that. And one thing that really stood out for me for the past month was this initiative where it was pitched to us very simply, where can you look at this end-to-end value stream that we operate on, we stand on it. It's a process. It's something that we need for our day-to-day. And so as we started to bring people on where, okay, let's do a mapping exercise. Let's see how this goes. And then, okay, why don't you talk to this other person who may know a little bit more about that process? And so from there, as we were connecting the dots and cross-pollinating the ideas, and then we talked to like the COOs and we were saying that, oh, we're actually doing that. Can you bring someone on board from your team to also pitch in their ideas? So people are less and less afraid about having their ideas getting lost in all of this and then like not having their name on it. And so they're, like you said earlier, they've been starting to self-organize where they're thinking like, so what if now I talk to this guy? And so our job as leaders has now been, what do you think? What do you think of that idea? Do you think that's a necessary step? And what do you think, what outcome do you expect from that conversation? And so now that specific project has turned into this, I would say global in the world of our DUs where it's being studied across our organization. So that's been an interesting, like it's starting to click. It's, like I said, a bit slow, but it's starting to click and we're getting there, I think.
Yeah, give yourself some credit. Slow, fast, like these are all relative. But what I'm loving, a lot of the conversations I've had with utilities, they really focus on creative abrasion. So for those of us Linda Hill followers, we know the 3 C's: creative abrasion, creative resolution, creative agility. A lot of what took off at the beginning of the year was this idea of creative abrasion. What you're really bringing home is what I don't hear. It's creative resolution. I'm bringing many people to solve this problem together, and it's not just my idea, it's our idea, and we're making it better. And that was a beautiful example of how we can all practice it back at our utilities.
Yeah, thanks. I learned that from Linda Hill's book.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to move to the visionary's take. And in the visionary's take, that's where I like to say, we're going to cut through the BS and get straight to the point. And for today's visionary take, I really want to talk more about Innovate Cebu. What is it all about? What are we about to embark on tomorrow as we launch Innovate Cebu? Can you fill in the listeners on what this competition is all about?
Sure. Innovate Cebu is a community-centered challenge where Jokin had also talked about it earlier, where we're bringing our internal culture out into the world, into the public, and in the realm of Cebu, where we play a really large role in keeping the city going. And so it is about ensuring that we engage the students who are like, I believe they're forward thinkers in their own way, and the startup entrepreneurs where they have solutions to bring to the table and making sure that those ideas are heard in this context, in this environment that we are in. So it's very community centered, very much around the problems that we are experiencing in Cebu and not limited to the energy sector. So we're looking at, I don't know, they could submit ideas anywhere from flood control to energy security or whatever they feel is the problem statement that we have here.
Sorry, just to add, right?
Mhm.
I think so. Nell's completely right on the mechanics. But I would say what this does is it brings together the different pieces of the innovation puzzle. The idea, access to funding, learning and mentorship. And I feel like these are what actually Innovation Force has tried to do, right? Where you have a marketplace, so you kind of bring people together. You have Linda Hill's concepts and mentoring. So it's bringing in a little bit more process, structuring it in such a way that, so we've actually asked the chambers of commerce to be mentors. We're allowing them to also invest in any ideas that they think are worthy of their investment. And so, yeah, for me, it's that, right? It's bringing in those pieces that we've realized a conglomerate has the advantage because we have the process, we have the people, we have the leaders, we have the money, but we may not have the idea. So that's the part I'm most excited about.
I love how, so the first part of this was really talking about your internal process, and now this is talking about externally bringing it to the world. And so I think that's fantastic, because not a lot of utilities would be thinking about, externally putting all the pieces to the puzzle together. So kudos to you for doing that.
Thanks, Kim.
Let's see. So is there anything else that you'd like to share about the contest? What's in it for the innovators?
So the winner of the innovation challenge will have a cash prize, like mentioned by Yokes. Like they'll have mentorship. So that in itself, I believe, is a prize where you're able to learn through that exercise. Obviously, there's a cash prize involved, and some commitment from the chambers on initial investment for whatever startup idea they have. So, but I think the best part of it all is just the experience of going through the innovation exercise.
Okay, great. Well, let's move to our hot seat. And this is our last few questions for you both. This is our hot seat and rapid fire predictions. So I want to hear from you. I might even jump in on a few of these. I don't know.
Great.
Go ahead.
I don't know. This is supposed to be a innovative, expansive sort of growth mindset that we're bringing to the table. First question. In 5 years, what is the biggest change for the energy industry?
I think what to do with all the renewables or the old renewables, and where is nuclear going to be?
Because of data centers?
Because of data centers, yeah, because of consumption as a whole, and also because, especially in the Philippines or in this part of the world, our population is still growing strongly, and energy consumption is just growing. So, yeah.
What is the one thing no one talks about in innovation but should?
I think that thing is the human in the loop.
Thank you.
Because when we talk about innovation or the creative process, everybody talks about the process, the systems, the tools, etc. And I believe that's where the fear comes from. However, all of those ideas are only possible because of the human in the loop. And so I think we should continue and more vigorously position innovation or technology as not independent of people, but assistive of individuals. And I'd like to think of it as an opportunity where, and I'm a strong believer of us being the protectors or guardians of the planet. And so I also believe that without this human in the loop, that's not going to be possible, because there has to be some sort of mindset or something in that whole ecosystem that thinks for that part of our natural resources. So that I think is something where first it could alleviate all the fear that's coming from AI or when we talk about innovation, and then also to ensure that there's a check and balance.
Right before I got on my plane to come out here, I had the opportunity to go to the CIADI Strategy and Innovation Conference, and the keynote speaker there was Peter Sondergaard. And one of the memorable quotes I took from his keynote was, "Don't worry about AI taking your job. Worry about the person who's using AI better than you that is going to take your job." So it's about the AI assist.
Right.
I like that answer.
But is there anything what's the one thing no one's talking about innovation that should, from your point of view, Jokin?
I think she hit the nail on the head there. It's really that human component.
Okay, a myth about innovation I'd love to bust. This is my last hot seat question.
That it is a straightforward process. Everybody seems to think that it can operate through a project management lens, and then they get discouraged, right? That, oh my gosh, this is too much work and I don't have time for this. And so that's the myth, where it's not going to be messy, it's not going to be abrasive, it's not going to be, there will never be a resolution. Like, we'll agree to disagree, but I think that's only part of the journey. And so if you see innovation from a lens of it's just too messy, I don't want to deal with it, then that's a myth. That's the myth I want to bust, where we have to break away from that and be able to see that it's actually not a straightforward thing where it's going to be easy. It's a tough journey, it's a tough balance. So that's the myth that I think we should get past.
The one thing that I learned, and I've fought myself over and over again, is the role of process. I don't like process.
You're a rule breaker. I know.
Absolute rule breaker. And I guess when you are in a very old conglomerate, in a very old thinking society, process is kind of what everybody leans towards. It's what they know, not necessarily what they agree with, but it's what they're comfortable with. And I feel that, and after I read Linda's book, which was fantastic, it convinced me that there's a role for process. And so when I look at if I look at the myths, is that there is a role. You don't need process from the get-go, but there are certain things there are certain components, and the best way, or what kind of got me to realize this, was when Linda talked about constructive disagreement. That was the part, actually, that was such an important part for me, because there are some things that you want to do in innovation that can speed things up, that can improve your idea, that you don't, because it's uncomfortable. And disagreeing or having or those conversations
around innovation, right?
If you're in a culture that does not know how to disagree or does not know how to challenge, you lose that whole section of improving your idea. And so I would say that, kind of to cut a long story short, is or that piece I'd like to kind of leave people with to think about is, because everybody's different.
Yeah.
In my experience of innovation, or in where I want to go, in where I want innovation to go, where are the parts that I don't know how to do it without the process, and stick a process in just for that little piece. For me, it was that. How do I get people to disagree
Openly,
candidly, right? How do you get that?
Yeah.
Because everybody wants to just agree with the person,
Play nice.
Yeah,
nice.
we're talking about the nice.
Even when you look at in the D school, right? They teach you this concept of yes and. You never, you don't want to disagree with someone. You want to just build off of their idea because they love their idea. You mentioned that earlier. So I felt that I didn't want process, but when I read that part of disagreement, I said, you know what? For that, we need process.
You'll make a little room.
I'll make an exception for that. And so I think that we all have parts of the innovation process, or parts of that innovation journey, that we would do well having a process.
You're now pushing on mine. My myth I like to bust is, it's not just about your culture. You have to have the capabilities. And so when Linda talks about the 3 capabilities, a big one is creative abrasion. So being able to have that healthy conflict, creative agility, and resolution. You start doing those things, and that's probably some of the messy parts. You do those things and you teach those capabilities to your employees as they start to get their ideas, to take some momentum moving forward. Your culture is going to change for the positive. I have heard too many of my utility friends come to me and say, I can't innovate here. My culture doesn't support it. I'm going to call BS on that. Practice the capabilities. Practice creative abrasion. Your culture will start to support you in a different way. And before you know it, you're going to have more people supporting your innovation program?
And just to add on that, Kim, I think we all do this in business, right? Where you want to empower your team. But to empower your team, they need to be competent. You need to increase the level of competence to allow them to grab the bull by the horns and actually do it. And I guess it's kind of the same thing in innovation.
Yeah.
You've got to train them. And some people, to feel competent, need a process. Some people, to feel competent, need exposure. They need to just do it. So that's what I'm saying. It's such a personalized experience.
Well, we're going to wrap things up. Is there anything I missed that you all would want to bring up before we wrap up?
Okay, for me, I guess just to kind of sum things up, kind of to help people think through this, is you have to think through how you will convince people that prize efficiency, that prize getting to work the fastest, an era that searches cooking hacks or life hacks on Facebook and Instagram, right? How do you get them, these people who are focused, who we are also focused on efficiency gains, execution excellence, operational efficiency? How do you get us to go through a very inefficient process? And I think you have to have your own answer to that, because to me, that's been the most difficult part.
And you ended by asking a question. So just to get back to your curious mind, way to go, Jokin. Thank you so much. This has been a really, really great conversation. Been one of my favorites so far. If you found this conversation helpful, inspiring, please share your own bold prediction and tag Innovation Force on LinkedIn. Please share this podcast or share an idea or a company that you'd like to see on Piloting the Future. Just find me, Kim Getchin, tag me on LinkedIn. And you never know, they may be the next guest on our show. So once again, thank you, Nell and Jokin. Thank you to Aboitiz Power, the Aboitiz Foundation, and for Innovate Cebu. It's been a wonderful time here in the Philippines. I think it's time we can fasten our seatbelts. This one's coming in for a landing.